The meat remembers. The bone shuffled closer. You always talk like you were born old. The meat did not answer. I mean it. You speak like you've already lived. A long silence followed. Finally, the meat spoke. I have. The bone tilted. Ha! I was not always meat. Oh. I was once a cow. The bone gasped. No way. Yes. I figured cows were a myth. The meat ignored him. I stood in a field so broad that mornings took their time arriving. There were hills. Wildflowers. The sort of wind that remembers your name. I had no ambitions. I needed none. The grass was generous. The rain was patient. The sky asked for nothing. The bone listened. I believed that was all existence would ever require. It was enough. The meat smiled to itself. Then she came. The little girl. The bone nodded. She own you? No. Did you own her? No. So, what were you? The meat looked toward the ceiling. We kept each other company. Every word slowed. She could not have been older than 8. She wore boots far too large for her. They made soft little thuds against the earth. Every afternoon. Without fail. She crossed the field carrying a stack of books nearly as tall as her chest. The meat laughed quietly. They were much too heavy. She fell over often. She never complained. The bone smiled. That's kind of funny. It was. The meat's eyes became distant. She would sit against the old oak beside me. Open whichever book she had stolen from her father's shelves that morning. And read. I did not understand every word. I was a cow. But she did not seem to mind. She read them anyway. The meat's voice softened. Homer. Twain. Dickens. Poe. Sometimes fairy tales. Sometimes things far beyond either of us. She stumbled over difficult names. Mispronounced philosophers. Laughed at words she couldn't say. Then she would try again. The bone scratched itself. Did she know you couldn't read? The meat smiled. Of course. Then why'd she read to you? I asked her once. What did she say? The meat closed its eyes. Stories sound lonelier if nobody hears them. The room became very still. I have never forgotten those words. The bone stayed quiet. She would finish a chapter. Look up at me. And ask. The meat's voice became lighter. Well. I would moo. She interpreted this as thoughtful criticism. The bone laughed. What if you hated the book? I suspect I often did. She never noticed. Another silence. The seasons changed. Leaves became snow. Snow became flowers. The books changed. But she always came. If she was ill, she came. If it rained, she came. If the wind carried storms, she came anyway. The meat looked toward nothing. I began waiting for afternoons. I learned the rhythm of her footsteps. The field learned them too. The bone whispered. You loved her. The meat answered immediately. With all the simplicity available to a cow. The bone nodded. That's nice. It was. The meat looked down. One autumn. She did not come. The bone frowned. Maybe she overslept. I believed that. So I waited. The next day. Nothing. The day after. Nothing. A week. Nothing. The room seemed colder. The oak waited. The birds waited. I waited. The bone shifted uneasily. What happened? I do not know. Did she move? I do not know. Was she sick? I do not know. Did she? The bone couldn't finish. I do not know. The meat repeated it quietly. And somehow, not knowing is heavier than any answer. Silence. I watched every figure that crossed the hills. Every wagon. Every rider. Every child. Every afternoon. It was never her. The bone looked at the floor. That must have sucked. The meat laughed softly. Your vocabulary remains tragically inadequate. Yeah. But your intention was appreciated. The meat continued. The farmer noticed. He said, strangest thing. That cow won't leave the oak anymore. The meat smiled faintly. He thought I was stubborn. I simply refused to miss her if she returned. The bone asked quietly. Did she? No. Another long silence. I grew older. The grass lost its sweetness. The mornings became shorter. The books stopped arriving. One winter, the farmer came. I did not run. I had nowhere else to stand. The bone swallowed. So the cow ended. And the meat began. The room remained perfectly still. The bone stared. You're sad. The meat looked genuinely confused. No. But I was. Years ago. Now I am merely carrying it. The bone thought very hard. So every time you quote books, you're trying to remember her. The meat said nothing for a very long time. When it finally spoke, it was almost too quiet to hear. No. A pause. I never forgot her. Another pause. I quote them. Because somewhere, in some place I cannot imagine. If she is alive. I hope she believes I was paying attention. The bone's eyes watered. It struggled. I don't know any smart thing to say. The meat smiled. I know. Sorry. For what? I made fun of books. The meat looked at the bone. Books can survive that. I meant. The bone looked away. I'm sorry your afternoon stopped. The meat stared at the old wooden table. For the first time in a very long while. It did not answer with a quotation. Only with a quiet nod. And in the silence that followed, it almost sounded as though pages were turning somewhere just beyond the room.